Marcus Novak stood at the edge of the orc settlement with his heart hammering against his ribs, watching 5 orc women stare at him as though he had just sprouted wings and declared himself the moon. The tallest one, her green skin darker than the others, had her hand resting on the pommel of a massive axe, while the smallest clutched a basket of herbs so tightly her knuckles had gone pale. The autumn wind whipped through the clearing, carrying the scent of wood smoke and wild sage, and Marcus wondered if he had finally lost his mind after 3 years of wandering the frontier alone. The elder who had brought him here, a weathered orc woman named Gritha with silver streaking through her black braid, cleared her throat and spoke in the orcish tongue to the 5 women. Marcus caught only fragments, his understanding of their language still crude despite months of study. He heard the word for human, for husband, for volunteer, and watched as disbelief transformed into something else on their faces. Confusion, perhaps. Maybe hope, though that seemed too generous an interpretation. You truly wish to do this? Gritha asked him in heavily accented common, her yellow eyes boring into his. You understand what you offer? Marcus swallowed hard and nodded. Your clan needs someone who can bridge the gap between your people and the human settlements, someone who can negotiate, trade, help ease the tensions. And your customs require that person to be bound to the clan through marriage. He glanced at the 5 women again, trying not to let his nervousness show. I have no family left, no ties. I can do this. The second tallest woman, her tusks slightly larger than the others, stepped forward. Her dark hair was woven with small bones that rattled softly as she moved. He speaks our purpose plainly, grandmother, she said in common, clearly for Marcus's benefit. But does he understand he must choose one of us? That he will live as we live, sleep in our halls, eat our food, follow our ways? I understand, Marcus said, though his voice came out rougher than intended. I have lived on the frontier for 3 years. I know hardship. I know how to work. He paused, then added more softly, and I know what it means to be alone. The 5 women exchanged glances, and Marcus took the opportunity to study them more carefully. The tallest one had scars crisscrossing her muscular arms, the marks of a warrior. The one with the bone ornaments carried herself with the confidence of someone used to authority. The smallest seemed younger than the others, perhaps barely into adulthood, her green skin bearing fewer marks of hardship. The 4th woman had kind eyes and wore an apron stained with what looked like berry juice, suggesting she worked with food or dyes. The 5th stood slightly apart from the others, her expression guarded, one hand resting protectively over her stomach in a gesture that seemed unconscious. Gritha gestured for Marcus to follow her toward a large communal building at the center of the settlement. The 5 women trailed behind, their footsteps heavy on the packed earth. Inside, the space was warm and dimly lit by a central fire pit. Woven mats covered the floor, and the walls were decorated with painted symbols Marcus did not recognize. He was directed to sit, and the women arranged themselves in a semicircle facing him while Gritha took a position near the fire. I am Kara, the tallest one said, her voice deep and measured. War leader of this clan, I have 30 winters. She crossed her arms over her chest, the firelight making her scars stand out in sharp relief. Why would a human man volunteer to join us? Your kind despises us, calls us monsters and savages. Marcus met her gaze steadily. Not all humans think that way. And I have seen enough of my own kind's cruelty to know that monsters come in every shape. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. Your clan has been trying to establish peaceful trade with the border settlements for 2 years. Every attempt has been met with suspicion or outright hostility. I heard about your situation from a trader in Millbrook, who mentioned that your elder had been seeking someone who could act as intermediary, someone who could marry into the clan to make the bond legitimate in the eyes of both peoples. The woman with the bone ornaments in her hair nodded slowly. "I am Zasha," she said. "I have 28 winters. I am the clan's speaker and keeper of traditions." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "You have heard correctly. But we expected that if anyone came forward, it would be because they were desperate or had something to gain." "What do you seek, Marcus Novak?" The question hung in the air, and Marcus found himself looking down at his calloused hands. What did he seek? Safety, purpose, redemption for failing to protect his family when raiders had burned his village. All of those things, perhaps, tangled together until he could not separate one need from another. "I seek a place to belong," he said finally, the honesty of it making his chest tight. "I was a farmer once. Had a wife and a daughter. They died 3 years ago when bandits came through our settlement. I have been wandering ever since, taking odd jobs, moving from place to place. I heard about your clan's need and thought perhaps I could be useful. Perhaps I could make something good come from all this emptiness." Silence greeted his words, but it was a different kind of silence now, softer, less hostile. The smallest woman spoke up, her voice higher and more uncertain than the others. "I am Nessa. I have 19 winters." She glanced at the older women as if seeking permission, then continued. "I help with the children and the gardens. I have never known a human before. Are they all as sad as you?" Despite himself, Marcus felt his lips twitch into something that was almost a smile. "No, many are happy. Some are kind. Some are cruel. We are as varied as any people." The woman in the stained apron cleared her throat. "I am Brenna. 26 winters. I work the dyes and the weaving." Her expression was cautious but not unkind. "If you marry one of us, you must know that our clan is small. We have only 43 people. We struggle. Winters are hard. Human settlements will not trade with us fairly because they fear us. Some moons we go hungry." "I know," Marcus said. "Gritha told me." The fifth woman, the one who stood apart, finally spoke. Her voice was quieter than the others, tinged with something Marcus could not quite identify. "I am Thora. 25 winters. I am widowed." She did not elaborate, and no one pressed her to do so. Her hand still rested over her stomach, and Marcus realized with a jolt what that gesture meant. She was pregnant. Gritha stirred the fire with a long stick, sending sparks dancing upward. "These 5 women are the unwed or widowed of our clan who are of age for marriage. By our laws, you must choose one. You will have 3 moons to court properly before the bonding ceremony, so that you may learn each other's ways and see if your spirits are compatible. During that time, you will live among us, work alongside us, and prove your worth." Marcus nodded. "That is fair." Kara leaned forward, her expression intense. "You may find it harder than you think, human. Our work is not like yours. We hunt, we fight, we defend our territory from those who would drive us out. Can you keep pace with an orc woman? Can you stand beside her when danger comes?" "I can learn," Marcus said. "I am strong enough. I may not be as powerful as your warriors, but I am resourceful. I know how to track, how to read the land, how to fight when necessary." Zasha tilted her head, studying him with those sharp eyes. "And which of us draws your interest, Marcus Novak?" "You must make a preliminary choice, though the courting period allows for changing your mind if the match proves ill-suited." This was the moment Marcus had been dreading. How could he choose when he knew nothing about these women beyond their names and roles? How could he make a decision that would bind his life to one of theirs based on a single conversation? He looked at each woman in turn. Kara, fierce and protective, a shield for her people. Zasha, intelligent and traditional, a keeper of wisdom. Nessa, young and gentle, still finding her place. Brenna, practical and steady, a maker of beautiful things. Thora, wounded and guarded, carrying new life within her. May I ask questions first? Marcus said. I do not wish to choose blindly, Gritha nodded. That is wise. Speak. Marcus turned to Kara first. What would you need from a husband? What would you expect? Kara did not hesitate. Someone who does not fear my strength. Someone who can stand on his own but fight beside me when needed. Someone who understands that I will always put the clan's safety first. Her expression softened slightly. And someone who would not try to make me into something softer than I am. He looked at Zasha next. And you? Someone who respects tradition but is not bound by it, Zasha said thoughtfully. Someone who can help me navigate the changing world we face. We cannot live as our ancestors did, isolated and proud. We must adapt, but we must not lose ourselves. That balance requires wisdom. Nessa fidgeted with the edge of her tunic. I would want someone kind, she said softly. Someone who would teach me about the world beyond our borders. I have never traveled, I have seen so little. Her green cheeks darkened slightly. And someone patient. I know I am young. I know I have much to learn. Brenna's answer was practical. Someone who works hard, someone who does not complain when times are difficult. Someone who appreciates the small beauties in life, the color of a sunset or the pattern in woven cloth. She paused. Someone who would sit with me in comfortable silence at the end of a long day. Thora was silent for a long moment, and Marcus thought she might not answer at all. Then she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Someone who would not expect me to forget my first husband. Someone who would accept that my heart is complicated right now. Someone who would be good to the child I carry, even though it is not his. The rawness of her words struck Marcus like a physical blow. He understood that kind of grief, that sense of loving someone who was gone while trying to move forward into an uncertain future. How did your husband die? Marcus asked gently. Hunting accident, Thora said, her jaw tight. 4 moons ago. A boar gored him. He lived for 3 days before the fever took him. She looked away. The baby will come in the spring. I need someone who can provide for us, but I also need someone who understands that I am not fully healed. I may never be. Marcus felt something shift in his chest, a recognition of shared pain. I understand, he said. I truly do. Gritha watched this exchange with ancient eyes, then spoke. You need not choose this moment. Tomorrow you will begin working with the clan. You will see how each of these women lives, how they move through their days. In 3 days' time, you will make your preliminary choice. Is this acceptable? Yes, Marcus said, relieved to have more time. Thank you. The women dispersed, each returning to their evening tasks, and Marcus was shown to a small guest shelter at the edge of the settlement. It was simple but clean, with a straw mattress and wool blankets. He lay awake long into the night, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the orc village and wondering what in the world he had gotten himself into. The next morning arrived cold and bright, frost glittering on the grass. Marcus woke to find Kara standing outside his shelter, already dressed in hunting leathers with her axe strapped across her back. You said you know how to track, she said without preamble. Prove it. Marcus scrambled to his feet, pulling on his boots and coat. He followed Kara into the forest, moving quickly to keep up with her long strides. She moved through the underbrush with practiced ease, barely making a sound despite her size. Marcus did his best to emulate her, remembering the skills he had learned as a boy from his father. After about an hour of walking, Kara stopped and pointed to the ground. What do you see? Marcus crouched down, examining the disturbed leaves and faint impressions in the soft earth. Deer, he said, 3 of them moving east, passed through here perhaps 2 hours ago. One is smaller, likely a fawn. Kara's expression did not change, but she nodded. Good, follow the trail. They tracked the deer for another hour, and Marcus was surprised to find himself falling into an easy rhythm with Kara. She would occasionally point out signs he had missed, and he offered observations about broken branches and scat that indicated other animals in the area. When they finally spotted the deer grazing in a small clearing, Kara held up her hand to stop him. "We will not take them today," she said quietly. "I only wanted to see if you truly had the skill you claimed." They walked back to the village in companionable silence. As they neared the settlement, Kara finally spoke again. "You did well. You move more quietly than most humans I have seen. You listen. That is good." "Thank you," Marcus said, oddly pleased by the sparse praise. Kara paused at the edge of the village and turned to face him fully. "I must be honest with you, Marcus Novak. I did not think any human would truly volunteer for this. I thought it was a foolish hope, a waste of time." She crossed her arms. "I am not easy to live with. I am often away hunting or patrolling our borders. I have a temper. I do not soften my words or hide my thoughts. If you were to choose me, your life would not be peaceful." Marcus considered this. "Peaceful and good are not always the same thing," he said. "I have seen too much of the world to believe that a quiet life is the only worthy goal." Something flickered in Kara's eyes, an emotion too quick to name. "We will see," she said, and then she was striding away toward the communal hall. The afternoon brought a different teacher. Zasha found Marcus helping to stack firewood and beckoned him to follow her. She led him to a smaller building filled with scrolls, carved tablets, and various ceremonial objects. "This is the memory house," Zasha explained. "Here we keep the stories of our people, our laws, our treaties and grievances." She ran her fingers over a carved stone tablet with obvious reverence. "If you are to be part of this clan, you must understand where we come from. You must know our pain and our triumphs." For the next several hours, Zasha taught him about orc history. She spoke of a time when orcs and humans had lived in relative peace, trading and occasionally intermarrying. Then came the wars, sparked by human kings who wanted to expand their territories and saw orcs as obstacles to be removed. Orc clans were driven from their traditional lands, hunted like animals, their children stolen and their villages burned. "My own grandmother was born during the flight," Zasha said, her voice heavy with old sorrow. "She never knew the homeland our people speak of in the old songs. She was born in a refugee camp, raised on stories of what we had lost." Marcus listened, feeling the weight of this history settle on his shoulders. "I did not know," he said quietly. "In human settlements, they teach us that orcs are raiders and savages, that you attacked us first." Zasha's smile was bitter. "History is written by those who win the wars. We did not win." She turned to face him fully. "But this is why your presence here matters, Marcus. If a human can stand with us, can learn our truth and carry it back to your people, perhaps something can change. Perhaps our children will not have to live in hiding." "I will do my best," Marcus promised. Zasha studied him for a long moment. "I believe you mean that," she said finally. "Come, I will teach you some of our language. You will need it." They spent the rest of the afternoon on language lessons, and Marcus discovered that Zasha was a patient but exacting teacher. She corrected his pronunciation repeatedly until he got it right, but she also praised him when he made progress. By the time the sun began to set, Marcus could string together basic sentences and understood far more than he had that morning. The second day brought Nessa. She found him at breakfast and shyly asked if he would help her in the gardens. Marcus agreed readily, curious to learn more about the youngest of his potential brides. The garden was larger than he had expected, sprawling across a south-facing slope that caught the morning sun. Nessa showed him the various plants they grew, explaining which were for food and which were medicinal. Her knowledge was impressive, and her love for this work was evident in every word. "My mother was the garden keeper before me," Nessa said as she knelt to pull weeds from around a stand of root vegetables. "She taught me everything: how to read the soil, how to know when to plant and when to harvest. She died 2 winters ago, and I miss her every day." Marcus worked beside her, his hands quickly becoming dirty as they turned soil and removed stones. "It must be hard, carrying that responsibility so young." Nessa nodded. "Sometimes I feel like I am not ready, like I am still a child playing at adult tasks." She glanced at him, her expression vulnerable. "That is why I am not sure I should be among the women you consider. I am not. I am not fully formed yet, if that makes sense." "It makes sense," Marcus said gently, "but being young does not mean you have nothing to offer. You care for this garden beautifully. You are keeping your people fed. That takes strength and dedication." Nessa's cheeks darkened with a blush. "You are kind to say so." She was quiet for a moment, then added, "If you chose me, I would try very hard to be a good wife. I would learn everything I needed to know. I would not disappoint you." Marcus stopped working and looked at her directly. "Nessa, if I were to choose you, it should not be because you are trying to become what you think I want. It should be because we genuinely suit each other. You should not have to disappear yourself to make a marriage work." She blinked at him, clearly surprised. "That is not how I thought humans viewed marriage." "Maybe not all humans," Marcus admitted, "but it is how I view it." They worked in comfortable silence after that, and Marcus found himself enjoying Nessa's company. She was sweet and earnest, and there was something soothing about the simplicity of garden work. But he also recognized that the age gap between them felt significant, not in years so much as in experience. Nessa had been sheltered, protected by her clan. Marcus had seen too much darkness. He was not sure their paths would truly align. The third day belonged to Brenna. She was waiting for him after breakfast with a slight smile on her face. "Come," she said. "I will show you how we make the dyes." Her workshop was a riot of color, with hanks of yarn and strips of fabric hanging from the rafters in every shade imaginable. Large pots sat over fire pits, and the air smelled of plant matter and mineral compounds. Brenna moved through this space with confident grace, explaining her process as she worked. "Color is magic," she said as she stirred a pot of deep blue dye. "It transforms the ordinary into something beautiful. It brings joy to difficult lives." Marcus watched her work, fascinated by the precision and artistry involved. Brenna showed him how to prepare the fibers, how to achieve different shades by varying the temperature and timing, how to set the colors so they would not fade. Her hands were stained with years of this work, a rainbow map across her green skin. "You enjoy making beautiful things?" Brenna asked as she handed him a skein of wool to wind. "I never thought much about it," Marcus admitted. "As a farmer, I focused on function, crops that would grow, fences that would hold, but I can see the value in beauty. The world is harsh enough. We need lovely things to soften it." Brenna's smile widened. "Exactly." She paused in her stirring. "I will be honest with you, Marcus. I am not a woman of grand passions or dramatic gestures. I am steady, reliable, some might say boring." "I would not say boring," Marcus countered. "I would say peaceful. There is a difference." She tilted her head, considering him. "My first suitor many years ago left because he said I was too quiet. He wanted someone more exciting, more fiery." She shrugged. "I have been alone since then. Content mostly, but sometimes lonely." Marcus understood that particular flavor of loneliness, the kind that came from being self-sufficient but still yearning for connection. "I do not need excitement," he said. "I have had enough chaos to last a lifetime." Brenna's expression softened. "Then perhaps we would suit each other well." She returned her attention to the dye pot. But you should spend time with Thora before you decide. She needs this more than any of us." That evening, Marcus sought out Thora. He found her sitting alone near the edge of the settlement, looking out over the darkening forest. She glanced up as he approached, and for a moment he thought she might tell him to leave. Then she gestured to the ground beside her. "Sit if you want," she said. Marcus lowered himself to the grass, leaving a respectful distance between them. They sat in silence for a long while, watching the stars emerge one by one. Finally, Thora spoke. "Gritha told me I should be among the women you consider, but I do not know if that is fair to you. I am broken, Marcus. I loved my husband deeply. His death tore something out of me that I do not think will ever fully heal." "I know what that feels like," Marcus said quietly. He told her about his wife, about his daughter, about the day he came home to find them gone. He spoke of the guilt that still ate at him, the sense that he should have been there, should have protected them. "I have not loved anyone since," he said. "I am not sure I remember how." Thora was silent, her hand resting over her swollen belly. "My baby deserves a father who will love them," she said. "Not someone who is just going through the motions." "I agree," Marcus said, "but I also think there are different kinds of love. Maybe we cannot give each other the passionate, all-consuming love of first marriages. But we could give each other companionship, partnership, shared purpose." He hesitated, then added, "And I think I could love your child. I remember what it feels like to be a father. I miss it." Thora turned to look at him then, really look at him, and Marcus saw the tears gathering in her eyes. "You would truly take on another man's child, raise them as your own?" "Yes," Marcus said without hesitation. "If you would let me." Thora covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking. Marcus reached out instinctively, then stopped, unsure if his touch would be welcome. But Thora leaned into him, and he wrapped his arms around her as she cried. They stayed that way until the moon rose high above them, two broken people finding unexpected comfort in each other's presence. The fourth day was for decision-making. Gritha summoned Marcus to the memory house, where the 5 women waited. Each of them looked nervous in their own way. Kara stood with rigid posture, her jaw tight. Zasha's fingers drummed against her thigh. Nessa could not seem to stop fidgeting. Brenna's expression was carefully neutral. Thora sat with her hands folded over her belly, her eyes on the floor. "You have spent time with each of them," Gritha said. "Now you must choose. Who will you court?" Marcus took a deep breath. He had thought about little else through the long night, weighing his options, trying to imagine a future with each woman. They were all worthy. They were all deserving of happiness, but he could only choose one. "Thora," he said, and watched as her head snapped up in surprise. "If she will have me, I would like to court Thora." The other women showed various reactions. Nessa looked relieved if he was honest. Kara nodded as though this confirmed something she had suspected. Zasha's expression was approving. Brenna smiled softly, and Marcus remembered her words about Thora needing this most. Thora stood slowly, her eyes wide. "Are you certain? You understand what you are taking on?" Marcus crossed the space between them and held out his hand. "I understand, and I am certain." Thora stared at his outstretched hand for a long moment before placing her own in it. Her fingers were cold, trembling slightly. Marcus squeezed gently, trying to convey reassurance. Gritha thumped her staff on the ground. "It is decided, then. Marcus Novak will court Thora for 3 moons. At the end of that time, if both are willing, they will be bonded according to our traditions." She looked at the other women. "You are dismissed with honor. You have conducted yourselves with dignity." The women filed out, each offering Thora a word or gesture of support. When they were alone with Gritha, the elder studied them both with those penetrating eyes. "The path ahead will not be easy," she said. "You both carry heavy grief. You will need patience with each other and with yourselves, but I believe this can be a good match." She smiled, the expression transforming her weathered face. "Now go. Begin learning each other." The courting period began with awkward formality. Thora showed Marcus to a shelter near her own, explaining that tradition required them to maintain separate homes until they were bonded. They would share meals, work together, spend their days in each other's company, but the nights were their own. Marcus spent the first week simply trying to understand Thora's routines. She woke early before dawn and spent the first hour of each day in a small shrine she had built to honor her dead husband. Marcus did not intrude on this time, recognizing it as sacred. After her morning ritual, Thora would help prepare the communal breakfast, then spend the day on various tasks around the settlement. She was skilled at tanning leather, and Marcus watched as she transformed raw hides into supple, beautiful material. "My husband was a hunter," Thora explained as she worked. "He would bring back the kills, and I would make sure nothing was wasted. Meat for food, bones for tools, hide for clothing and shelter." Her hands moved with practiced ease. "I promised him I would teach our child this skill. I promised I would keep his knowledge alive." Marcus nodded, understanding the importance of such promises. "What was his name?" "Gorak," Thora said, her voice soft. "He had the kindest laugh. It was this deep, rumbling sound that made everyone around him smile." She paused in her work, staring at nothing. "I miss that laugh most of all." "Tell me about him," Marcus said. "Please, I want to know who he was." Thora looked surprised, then cautiously pleased. She began to talk, sharing memories of her husband. How they had met as children and been friends for years before love bloomed between them. How he had courted her with terrible poetry and hand-picked flowers. How he had wept with joy when she told him about the baby. Marcus listened, asking questions, letting Thora speak her grief and love aloud. He noticed that talking about Gorak seemed to ease something in her, as though giving voice to his memory honored him in a way that silence did not. In return, Marcus began to share his own stories. He told Thora about his wife, Elena, and her fierce independence. He spoke of his daughter, Ada, who had been 7 years old and obsessed with collecting interesting rocks. He described the life they had built together, the small joys and daily frustrations that made up a marriage. "Does it ever get easier?" Thora asked one evening as they sat by the fire. "The missing. It gets different," Marcus said carefully. "The sharp edges dull. The pain becomes something you can carry instead of something that carries you, but it never fully disappears." Thora nodded slowly. "I am afraid," she admitted. "Afraid that if I move forward I will lose Gorak somehow, that he will fade away." "He won't," Marcus assured her. "Love does not work that way. You can hold space in your heart for what was while still making room for what might be. They do not cancel each other out." Over the following weeks, a tentative friendship developed between them. Marcus began helping Thora with her work, learning the art of tanning leather. His hands, already calloused from years of farm work, adapted to this new skill. Thora was patient with his mistakes, showing him again and again how to scrape the hide without damaging it, how to apply the tanning solution evenly. In turn, Marcus shared his knowledge of farming and animal husbandry. The clan had a few goats and chickens, but their practices were less refined than what Marcus had learned growing up. He showed them how to rotate pastures to prevent overgrazing, how to supplement feed during lean times, how to identify and treat common livestock ailments. The settlement began to accept Marcus as one of their own. Children who had initially been shy around him started to approach, curious about this strange human who spoke their language with a clumsy accent. The warriors who had been suspicious began to include him in their practice sessions, teaching him orc fighting techniques while he showed them human tactics. Kara, in particular, became an unexpected friend. She would often invite Marcus on her patrols, and they would spend hours walking the borders of clan territory while discussing strategy and philosophy. "You think differently than we do," Kara observed one day. "Not better or worse, just different. It is useful." Zasha continued his language education, and Marcus discovered he had an aptitude for learning. Within a month, he could hold complex conversations in Orcish, though his accent still marked him as a foreigner. Zasha seemed pleased with his progress. "You show proper respect for our ways," she said. "That matters more than perfect pronunciation." But it was his relationship with Thora that occupied most of Marcus's thoughts. As winter began to settle over the land, bringing cold winds and early snow, he noticed changes in her. She smiled more easily. She reached for his hand sometimes when they walked. She began to include him in her morning rituals, showing him how to offer proper respects to the dead. One evening, as they prepared dinner together, Thora suddenly gasped and grabbed Marcus's hand, pressing it to her swollen stomach. "Feel that," she said, her eyes bright with wonder. Marcus felt a strong kick against his palm, and something in his chest cracked open. The baby was real, tangible, a small life growing stronger each day. He looked at Thora and saw his own emotion mirrored in her face. "That is amazing," he whispered. Thora's hand covered his. "The baby likes you," she said. "They kick more when you are near." As the weeks passed, Marcus found himself falling into an easy rhythm with Thora. They began to anticipate each other's needs, moving around their shared workspace with practiced coordination. Thora would start a sentence, and Marcus would finish it. Marcus would reach for a tool and find that Thora had already set it within reach. The physical attraction grew slowly, built on a foundation of trust and shared experience. Marcus noticed the way Thora's hair caught the firelight, the strength in her shoulders as she worked, the soft curve of her smile when she was happy. Thora, in turn, seemed to appreciate his steady presence, the way he listened without judgment, his quiet competence. But they moved carefully, both aware of the fragility of what they were building. There were setbacks. Days when Thora would retreat into grief so profound that Marcus could not reach her. Nights when Marcus would wake from nightmares about his lost family and spend hours staring into darkness. But they learned to weather these storms together, to offer comfort without demanding recovery. 2 moons into the courting period, a crisis struck the settlement. A group of human hunters had crossed into clan territory, either by accident or deliberate provocation. They had killed a deer that the clan had been tracking, and when Kara's patrol confronted them, tensions had escalated quickly. Marcus was working with Thora when the alarm went up. They hurried to the center of the settlement, where Kara stood facing 3 human men. The hunters had drawn weapons, and several orc warriors had responded in kind. The situation was moments away from violence. "Stop!" Marcus shouted, pushing his way through the crowd. "Everyone lower your weapons." One of the hunters recognized him. "Novak, Marcus Novak, what in the hells are you doing here with these monsters?" Marcus stepped between the 2 groups, his heart pounding. "They are not monsters, they are people. This is their land, you are trespassing." "This is frontier land," the hunter argued, "free for anyone to use." "No," Marcus said firmly. "This territory was ceded to the orc clans in the treaty of 7 years ago. You have no legal right to be here." He looked at Kara. "But killing them will not help your cause. It will only bring more trouble." Kara's jaw was tight with fury, but she nodded slowly. "What do you suggest?" Marcus turned back to the hunters. "You leave. Now. You forfeit the deer you killed, and you spread the word in the settlements that this land is protected. In return, the clan will not pursue this matter further." The hunters looked ready to argue, but something in Marcus's expression must have convinced them. They lowered their weapons and backed away, leaving the deer carcass behind. As they disappeared into the forest, the tension in the settlement slowly eased. Kara clasped Marcus's shoulder. "You may have prevented bloodshed today. The clan is in your debt." But that night, lying in his shelter, Marcus felt the weight of what he had done. He had chosen a side, definitively and publicly. There would be no going back to the human settlements now, no pretending he was a neutral party. He had bound himself to the orcs in a way that went beyond his impending marriage to Thora. A soft sound at his door made him sit up. Thora stood there, wrapped in a heavy cloak, her expression uncertain. "May I come in?" Marcus nodded, moving over to make room for her to sit. Thora lowered herself carefully, her pregnant belly making the movement awkward. For a long moment neither of them spoke. "You gave up your people today," Thora finally said. "For us." "I chose my people today," Marcus corrected gently. "This is where I belong now, with you, with the clan." Thora's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "Why would you do that for us?" Marcus took her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. "Because I care about you, because this place has become my home, because I am tired of being alone." He paused, gathering his courage. "And because I think I am falling in love with you." Thora drew in a sharp breath. "Marcus." "You do not have to say anything," Marcus said quickly. "I know your heart is still complicated. I know you still love Gorak. I am not asking you to choose between us. I am just being honest about how I feel." Thora was quiet for so long that Marcus began to worry he had made a terrible mistake. Then she leaned forward and rested her forehead against his. "I think I am falling in love with you too," she whispered. "And that terrifies me." "I know," Marcus said. "It terrifies me as well." They sat like that for a long time, forehead to forehead, breathing in sync. When Thora finally rose to leave, she pressed a soft kiss to Marcus's cheek. "Thank you," she said, "for everything." The final moon of their courting period arrived with deep winter. Snow blanketed the settlement, and the days grew short and brutally cold. The clan huddled together for warmth, and Marcus learned what Brenna had meant when she said that some months they went hungry. Hunting was difficult in the deep snow. The stores from autumn were dwindling. Everyone's faces grew gaunt. Marcus remembered the techniques his father had taught him for ice fishing, and he organized an expedition to a nearby frozen lake. The clan was skeptical at first, but when they returned with a substantial catch, attitudes shifted. Ice fishing became a regular activity, supplementing their dwindling supplies. Thora's pregnancy progressed, her belly growing larger as the baby developed. She moved more slowly now, tiring easily, and Marcus found himself taking on more of her work. He did not mind. In fact, he discovered a deep satisfaction in caring for her, in making her life a little easier during this difficult time. One particularly cold night, Thora's shelter lost its fire due to a chimney malfunction. Rather than let her freeze, Marcus insisted she stay in his shelter. They shared the small space awkwardly at first, hyper-aware of each other's presence. But the cold and exhaustion eventually won out, and they fell asleep pressed together for warmth. Marcus woke before dawn to find Thora curled against his chest, her hand resting over his heart. The intimacy of the moment made his breath catch. This was what he had been missing, he realized. Not just companionship or partnership, but this quiet tenderness. The simple comfort of holding someone and being held in return. Thora stirred, her eyes opening slowly. She looked up at Marcus, and he saw his own feelings reflected in her expression. "I do not want to leave," she said softly. "Then stay," Marcus replied. After that night, they stopped pretending to maintain separate spaces. Thora moved her few possessions into Marcus's shelter, and they began truly living as a couple. They still did not consummate their relationship, both agreeing to wait until after the bonding ceremony out of respect for tradition. But they held each other at night, they kissed. They learned the landscapes of each other's bodies with patient exploration. The bonding ceremony was planned for the first day of spring, which coincided with the end of their 3-moon courting period. As the date approached, the entire clan threw themselves into preparations. Brenna wove special ceremonial garments for both Marcus and Thora. Zasha prepared the ritual texts and offerings. Kara organized a hunt to provide meat for the celebration feast. Nessa approached Marcus one day as he was helping to clear snow from the communal paths. "I wanted to thank you," she said. "For what?" Marcus asked, surprised. "For not choosing me," Nessa said with a shy smile. "I realize now that I was not ready for marriage. I needed more time to grow, to find myself." She paused. "But watching you and Thora together has shown me what love can look like. When I am ready, I will seek something like what you have found." Marcus felt a rush of affection for this young woman. "You will make someone very happy one day, Nessa. When the time is right." The night before the ceremony, Gritha summoned Marcus to the memory house. She sat him down and studied him with those ancient eyes. "Tomorrow you will become one of us, not just in word but in truth. There is no going back from this, Marcus Novak. Are you prepared?" "I am," Marcus said without hesitation. Gritha nodded slowly. "You have surprised me. I did not expect a human to adapt so well to our ways. You have proven yourself a man of honor." She reached into a leather pouch and withdrew a small carved pendant. "This belonged to my late husband. I want you to have it." Marcus accepted the pendant, touched by the gesture. It was carved from bone into the shape of a wolf, intricate and beautiful. "Thank you, Gritha. I will treasure it." "See that you do," Gritha said gruffly. "And see that you treat Thora well. She has suffered enough." "I will spend the rest of my life making her happy," Marcus promised. "Or die trying." Gritha's expression softened. "I believe you will, human. I believe you will." The morning of the bonding ceremony dawned clear and cold. Marcus woke alone, as Thora had spent the night in the women's lodge according to tradition. He dressed in the ceremonial garments Brenna had made, a tunic and trousers of deep blue wool with intricate embroidery at the cuffs and collar. The designs were Orcish symbols for loyalty, strength, and new beginnings. The ceremony took place at noon, when the sun was highest in the sky. The entire clan gathered in a circle around the central fire pit. Marcus stood on one side, flanked by Kara and Zasha, who had agreed to stand as his witnesses. Thora emerged from the women's lodge wearing a dress of deep green, her hair braided with flowers that had been carefully preserved since autumn. Despite her heavy pregnancy, she moved with grace and dignity. Gritha stood at the center, her ceremonial staff in hand. She began to chant in the old Orcish tongue, words that Marcus only partly understood. The chant spoke of two souls joining, of grief transformed into hope, of love born from ashes. Marcus and Thora were instructed to face each other and join hands. Gritha wrapped a braided cord around their wrists, binding them together. "What do you swear to each other?" she asked. Thora spoke first, her voice strong and clear. "I swear to honor you, to stand beside you in times of trouble and times of joy. I swear to share my life with you, to trust you with my heart, even though it has been broken. I swear to raise my child with your love and guidance and to build a future together." She paused, tears streaming down her cheeks. "And I swear that though I will always carry Gorak in my heart, you will have your own place there, a place just as deep, just as true." Marcus's own eyes were wet as he responded. "I swear to protect you and your child with everything I have. I swear to be patient with your grief and gentle with your fears. I swear to honor the memory of Gorak and teach your child to honor him as well. I swear to be your partner, your friend, your lover, and your family." He tightened his grip on her hands. "And I swear that I will love you for the rest of my days with everything I am." Grither raised her staff high. "By the bonds of clan and custom, by the witness of your people, by the strength of your sworn words, I declare you bonded. Marcus Novak, you are now husband to Thora and son to our clan. Thora, you are now wife to Marcus and mother to his future children. May your union bring blessing to all." The clan erupted in cheers and celebration. The cord was unwound from their wrists and given to them to keep as a symbol of their bond. Marcus pulled Thora close, kissing her deeply as their people celebrated around them. When they finally broke apart, both were laughing and crying at once. The feast that followed was magnificent despite the winter scarcity. The hunters had brought down an elk, and the cooks had prepared it with herbs and roots that filled the air with mouth-watering aromas. There was music and dancing, stories and songs. Marcus found himself swept up in the joy of it, dancing with Thora when she had the energy, talking with clan members who congratulated him and welcomed him formally into their family. As the celebration wore on into the night, Marcus noticed Thora beginning to tire. He made their excuses and led her back to their shelter, which had been decorated with evergreen boughs and more of those precious preserved flowers. Someone had banked the fire so the space was warm and welcoming. Thora sat on the bed with a sigh of relief, rubbing her swollen belly. "I am exhausted," she admitted, "but happy, so very happy." Marcus knelt before her, unlacing her boots and gently removing them. "I am happy too," he said. He looked up at her, his heart so full it ached. "I did not think I would ever feel this way again. Thank you for giving me a second chance at life." Thora cupped his face in her hands. "We gave each other a second chance," she said. "I was drowning in grief, Marcus. You pulled me out. You showed me that I could survive, that I could even thrive again." They made love that night for the first time, slowly and tenderly, mindful of Thora's pregnancy. It was sweet and healing, a physical confirmation of the vows they had spoken. Afterward, they lay tangled together, trading lazy kisses and whispered words of affection. "I never imagined my life would turn out this way," Thora said softly. "When Gorak died, I thought my story was over. I thought I would just exist until the baby came and then exist for the baby's sake. But you have given me more than that. You have given me a future to look forward to." Marcus kissed her forehead. "We will build that future together. You, me, and the baby. We will create something beautiful." Winter gradually released its grip on the land. The days grew longer, the sun stronger. Snow melted into rushing streams, and the first green shoots began to appear. Thora's pregnancy entered its final stage, her belly enormous now, the baby very active. Marcus was constantly in awe of this miracle, feeling the baby kick and roll beneath his hands. He began preparing for the birth with the same intensity he had once applied to planting season. He learned everything he could from the clan's midwives, gathering supplies and setting up their shelter to be ready. When Thora teased him about being overprotective, he simply kissed her and continued his preparations. The baby came on a warm spring evening just as the first wildflowers were blooming on the hillsides. Thora's labor was long and difficult, and Marcus stayed by her side through all of it, holding her hand, wiping her brow, offering encouragement. When the midwife finally placed a squalling infant in Thora's arms, Marcus felt tears streaming down his face. "A son," the midwife announced, "strong and healthy." Thora looked down at the baby with wonder, then up at Marcus. "Do you want to hold him?" Marcus accepted the tiny bundle with shaking hands. The baby was perfect, with green skin like his mother and a shock of dark hair. He had stopped crying and was looking up at Marcus with unfocused eyes. "Hello, little one," Marcus whispered. "I am your father. I promise to love you and protect you always." Thora was crying openly now. "I want to name him Gorak," she said, "after his father. But I want his second name to be Marcus after you, Gorak Marcus. Is that acceptable?" Marcus could hardly speak past the lump in his throat. "It is perfect." He will carry both legacies. In the days and weeks that followed, Marcus discovered the profound joy and terror of fatherhood all over again. Little Gorak was a hungry, demanding infant who cried frequently and slept in short bursts. Marcus and Thora stumbled through those early days in a haze of exhaustion, learning to work as a team to meet their son's needs. But there were beautiful moments, too. The first time Gorak smiled at Marcus, the way he would calm when Marcus sang to him. The sight of Thora nursing their son, her face soft with love. Marcus had not known he could feel this complete, this anchored to the world. As spring turned to summer, Marcus began his work as a true intermediary between the clan and the human settlements. With Gorak strapped to his back in a carrying sling, he would travel to the nearest towns and negotiate trade agreements. It was slow, difficult work. Many humans still saw orcs as monsters and were hostile to Marcus's efforts. But gradually, he began to make progress. A few traders were willing to take a chance, to come to the settlement and see for themselves that the orcs were not the savages they had been taught to fear. These early successes built momentum. More traders came. The clan's carefully crafted goods found new markets. Food and supplies flowed more freely. By the time autumn arrived again, the settlement was more prosperous than it had been in years. The clan had built new shelters and expanded their gardens. Children who had been gaunt with hunger now had color in their cheeks. The future, which had seemed so uncertain a year ago, now held real promise. One crisp autumn evening, Marcus sat outside his shelter with Thora beside him and Gorak sleeping peacefully in his arms. The baby had grown so much, his features becoming more defined each day. He had Thora's eyes and what Marcus swore was his smile. "You ever regret it?" Thora asked quietly. "Giving up your human life to join us?" Marcus thought about the question seriously, then shook his head. "Never. This is where I belong. You are my family. The clan is my family. I have found more purpose and happiness here than I ever expected." Thora leaned her head on his shoulder. "I am glad, because I cannot imagine my life without you now. You have become essential to me, Marcus, to us." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set in a blaze of orange and gold. Marcus thought about the long journey that had brought him to this moment. All the pain and loss, the wandering and searching, had led him here. To this settlement, to this woman, to this child who bore his name and his heart. A year ago, he had stood at the edge of this village, uncertain and afraid, volunteering himself for an unknown future. 5 orc women had stared at him in disbelief, unable to comprehend why a human would choose them. Now one of those women was his wife, and he was father to a beautiful son, and he had a place in the world that felt right and true. Marcus kissed Thora's hair, then looked down at Gorak's sleeping face. "I love you both so much," he whispered, "more than I have words to express." "We love you too," Thora said, her hand finding his and squeezing tight. "Our family, our heart." The stars emerged one by one above them, the same stars that had watched over Marcus during all his lonely years of wandering, but they did not look cold and distant anymore. They looked like witnesses to his joy, like guardians of his hard-won happiness. He had found his home at last, in the most unlikely place, with the most unlikely people. And he would spend the rest of his life being worthy of this gift he had been given. Over the following years, Marcus and Thora's family grew. 2 years after Gorak's birth, Thora gave birth to a daughter they named Ada Elena, honoring both of Marcus's lost loves. The little girl had her mother's strength and her father's curiosity, and Gorak doted on his baby sister with fierce devotion. The settlement continued to thrive under Marcus's efforts at bridge building. More humans came to trade, and some even stayed to learn about orc culture. A few brave souls followed Marcus's example and married into the clan, creating a small but growing community of mixed families. The old prejudices did not disappear overnight, but they began to erode, one relationship at a time. Kara eventually found her own happiness with a human warrior woman who had been a mercenary before settling in the region. Zasha became a respected voice in negotiations between multiple clans and human settlements, her wisdom sought by both peoples. Nessa grew into a confident young woman and eventually married an orc man from a neighboring clan, creating important political alliances. Brenna continued her work with dyes and was commissioned to create tapestries that told the story of the new peace. Gritha lived to see her great-grandchildren playing with human and orc children alike, a sight she had never imagined in her youth. Before she died peacefully in her sleep at the age of 83 winters, she told Marcus that he had been the key that unlocked a better future. "You were the first," she said. "You were brave when it mattered. Thank you for choosing us." Marcus and Thora grew old together, their love deepening with each passing year. They taught their children to honor both their orc heritage and their human father, to see the value in both cultures, and to work for understanding. Gorak grew into a fine young man who became a trader like his father, while Ada Elena became a healer, combining orc herbal knowledge with human medical techniques. On their 20th anniversary, Marcus and Thora stood on the same hilltop where Thora had once looked out at an uncertain future. Now they looked down at a settlement that had tripled in size, with smoke rising from dozens of chimneys and the sounds of children playing in the common areas. "You remember the day we met?" Thora asked, her hand in Marcus's. They both showed signs of age now, gray in their hair and lines on their faces, but their love had only grown stronger. "How could I forget?" Marcus said. "You stared at me like I had lost my mind." Thora laughed, the sound still as beautiful to Marcus as it had been all those years ago. "You had lost your mind. Who volunteers to marry into an orc clan?" "Someone who was looking for home," Marcus said simply. "Someone who was lucky enough to find it." They stood together as the sun set, just as they had done countless times before and would do countless times again. The world had changed around them, but this moment was eternal. Two people who had found each other in the darkest times and built a life that mattered. A human man and an orc woman, against all odds and expectations, proving that love could bridge any divide. And as the stars emerged above them, Marcus thought about that younger version of himself who had stood trembling at the edge of the settlement, offering himself to the unknown. He wished he could go back and tell that frightened man that everything would turn out better than he could possibly imagine, that the risk would be worth it, that the 5 women who stared at him in disbelief would become his family, his friends, his community, that he would find not just a wife but a soulmate, not just a home but a purpose. But perhaps that younger Marcus had known somehow, deep in his bones. Perhaps that was why he had stepped forward when no one else would. Because some leaps of faith were worth taking, even when the outcome was uncertain. Especially when the outcome was uncertain, Marcus pulled Thora closer, breathing in the familiar scent of her, feeling the solid warmth of her beside him. "I would do it all again," he said softly. "Every moment, every choice, every challenge, it all led here, to you, to our family, to this life we built together." Thora turned to kiss him, her lips soft and familiar, "And I would choose you again," she said. "Every time, in every life. You are my second beginning, Marcus. My proof that love can bloom even in the ashes of grief." They walked back down the hill hand in hand as darkness fell, heading home to the warm shelter where their children and grandchildren waited. Behind them, the settlement glowed with lamplight and life, a testament to courage and compassion, to the power of one man's choice to step forward when others stepped back. Marcus Novak had volunteered when the Orc clan needed a human husband, and in doing so, he had not just found a wife. He had found redemption, purpose, family, and a love that had transformed not just his life but the lives of everyone around him. The 5 women who had stared at him in disbelief that first day would tell anyone who asked that Marcus had been the best thing to ever happen to their clan. And Marcus, walking home with his wife's hand in his, surrounded by the community he had helped build and the legacy he would leave behind, knew with absolute certainty that this Orc clan had been the best thing to ever happen to him. He had been lost, and they had given him a home. He had been broken, and they had helped him heal. He had been alone, and they had made him family. It was, he reflected as Thora laughed at something their grandson called out, the most perfectly imperfect life he could have imagined. And he would not trade a single moment of it for anything in the world.